Warning: the following video contains language and disturbing topics that could easily offend and disturb some audiences. Also, do not attack the individual mentioned in this video. This isn't made to expose anyone. It is just to look back on a crazy event. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. And with all that out of the way, thank you all so much and enjoy the video.
This film takes place less than a year after the September 11th terrorist attacks. I bring this up because it radically altered the culture of the time, in ways that make this movie feel exceptionally ignorant of the time, even though literally the only reason I can comprehend that this movie is set explicitly in 2002 is because the director grew up in that exact year.
If you were on YouTube and Twitter in 2022, you most likely heard of a guy by the name of the mysterious Mr. Enter being angry with the Pixar film Turning Red for being set in the wake of the September 11th terrorist attacks. This take ended up being so bad that people were constantly calling him out for it, also leading to some people making a whole lot of memes tying the movie to the attacks. I remember being on Twitter during that time and it was nothing but pure chaos. Now keep in mind, this was before I even watched the movie, so I didn't know much about what was going on at the time. Now, it's been a whole year since this whole controversy. I think now is a good time to look back on what exactly happened last April. This is George the Red Engine, and today, we're going to take a look at Mr. Enter's Turning Red review, and what made it so infamous in the first place. Before we talk about the whole Turning Red controversy, we need to go over who Mr. Enter is and his other controversies. I know what you're thinking. George, what other controversies do you think he might have caused? Believe me when I say, quite a few. John Rosansky was born in Massachusetts on July 21st, 1992. Originally, he had a gaming channel called Bravania, in which his goal was to play all the games listed in the book 1001 Video Games You Must Play Before You Die. But eventually, he grew unsatisfied with his efforts and deleted his entire channel, starting over from scratch. Then, in 2013, he created his second and current channel by the name of The Mysterious Mr. Enter. He used to do brony videos and review stuff for My Little Pony, but eventually, he would move on to do other shows and movies. Now, in terms of controversy, Mr. Enter has a pretty nasty track record in my opinion. His controversies include things like 1. Attacking and insulting writers and animators for certain episodes of SpongeBob and Family Guy. 2. Saying things that are completely untrue and stating false facts, like in his Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles review, when he said that the show had quote-unquote bad animation and characters. And 3. His now infamous COVID videos and anti-mask rants. He got massively called out to the point where he had to delete his DeviantArt account permanently. So yeah, Mr. Enter had quite a few problems in his career, but he also had bad stuff happen to him, like how his mother passed away at 45, which I can understand that it's not fun to go through. He also got insulted for being autistic. As someone who is also autistic, I can't agree that being insulted is just awful. Now, I know I'm diving into completely unrelated territory, but I figure that I should at least mention that. In 2022, he uploaded a video titled, Turning Red is a Mixed Bag. Unfortunately, things would eventually go downhill from there. Okay, now we're at the point where we talk about Mr. Enter's Turning Red review. Now this review has become very infamous with not just Turning Red and animation fans, but with his fans as well, to the point where he lost a lot of subscribers because of it. This whole review is equally as bad as the quote that caused the whole controversy, or maybe even worse than it. I had to suffer through this video 5 times just to get footage for this documentary. It's honestly baffling how this whole thing went viral. But before we get into that, we have to talk about the review itself, and the part that made it so infamous. What Mr. Enter says in this is honestly just laughably bad and nonsensical. I will be putting my points on some of these takes, and be giving my own explanations. And with that out of the way, let the pain begin.
I'm going to start with what held me back from actually enjoying the movie, and that is May's mother, Ming. I'm going to be dead straight with you. I hated this character so much that I thought I would have to stop watching the movie. Ming is a helicopter parent, the type who controls every little thing about their child's life and are super panicked that a slight deviation from their plan will harm their child. So they create this self-fulfilling prophecy, where they hurt their child so much more than the rest of the world could. Every time that Ming was on screen, I was angry. The two most infamous bits you've probably heard of, when she finds drawings of May's crush and drives her down to the store to show the boy in them what May did. And the other time is when she came down to school unprompted to try and give May menstrual pads without any self-awareness that she was doing it in front of her whole class. There's also a third moment that really struck me, and that's when May goes to Tyler's party, and Ming was so blind to any possible reasons that May might rebel, especially after the first two incidents, that she basically stops May from seeing her friends. Every time Ming was on screen, this was some of the most uncomfortable a Disney Pixar film has ever made me feel.
Okay, so in this first one, Mr. Enter is complaining about Ming being an overprotective mother to May. I understand how she may have made him feel uncomfortable, but this was intentional. Ming is only overprotective because of the horrible ways her mother raised her, which led to Ming presumably giving her that scar on her forehead. I will admit that I also hated Ming when I first watched the movie, but after rewatching it several times, I've grown to appreciate her a lot more than I used to. Also, Mr. Enter is just wrong about what Ming was doing in the film. She only drove to the Daisy Mart in that one scene because she thought that Devin, the store clerk, was doing nasty things to May. Also, she tried to give her pads because she only thought that she was on a certain time of the month. And the only reason she was mad at her friends is because she thought that they dragged her into selling merch so they could get money to go to the concert. When in reality, it was all May's idea and she didn't even know. I honestly have no idea what the heck he's talking about here, but I can easily say that things only get worse from here. Next!
Like, I hear some of the slang in this film, like the word besties, and while that term did apparently exist way back when, you would not be hearing that in middle school. The movie also overestimates how common cell phone use was among middle schoolers at the time. It wasn't until the mid to late 2000s when cell phones became a common thing in middle schools. Like, unless the family was rich, even the adults at the time would be using beepers.
Mother Hubbard. So here, he's saying things like how the term besties and how common cell phone use wasn't a thing in middle school during that time. Even though I wasn't born and raised during the early 2000s, I do believe that besties was used by kids during that time, middle school or otherwise. I also believe that kids using cell phones during that time was common back then, especially in case of emergencies like being sick or a school shooting. Also, the parents didn't have to be rich to buy a cell phone for their kids. Okay, so far this is just ludicrous, but the next two really triggered me.
The anime style also feels off due to the time period. While anime did exist in the West, obviously, besides Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball, Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, it was pretty niche until like 2005. Then we started getting tricklings of things like Zatch Bell, One Piece, and so on.
This one really ticked me off. Here, he's saying that the movie's anime style is out of place because it, quote-unquote, wasn't a big deal until 2005. Okay, as an anime fan myself, I can easily say that this is not true. I may not have been alive during that time, but I know that in the early 2000s, anime was incredibly popular in the West. We had anime like Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Inuyasha, Gundam, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon Adventure, Sonic X, and so much more. I should also mention Spirited Away, the only anime film to win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. I know it's probably not worth bringing up, but I figured that I should at least mention that. Around 2005, which was the year I was born, anime was struggling to stay afloat and stores were going out of business. So for Mr. Enter to say that anime wasn't big until 2005 is proof that he didn't do any research. Okay, here's the part you've all been waiting for. I promise, it's way worse than everything you've just heard.
This film takes place less than a year after the September 11th terrorist attacks. I bring this up because it radically altered the culture of the time, in ways that make this movie feel exceptionally ignorant of the time. Even though, literally, the only reason I can comprehend that this movie is set explicitly in 2002 is because the director grew up in that exact year. Yes, this film takes place in Canada, not the United States, but all over the Western world. Canada, America, the UK, much of Europe. People were paranoid because 9/11 wasn't the only terror attack that had happened. It was the major theme of the decade. I mean, I can understand not wanting everyone to be so fearful, as that goes against the tone that the movie is trying to establish. But then you have very awkward moments if you actually were there and you do actually remember the time period.
What the fuck?
Yup. So what Mr. Enter is trying to say is that because Turning Red is specifically set in 2002, it ignored the cultural impact of 9/11. Okay, there is so much wrong in this that I need to talk about. 1. The movie is set in Toronto, Canada, not the United States. 2. 9/11 isn't relevant to the movie's plot. And 3. Including it would be too dark and out of place because this is a children's film. This makes absolutely no sense. How the hell would a tragic terrorist attack fit into a movie about a girl turning into a red panda? Also, the way that Mr. Enter is portraying the post-9/11 world is just flat out awful. It legitimately sounds like he's saying that people would be in a position to always live in total fear and worry that another terrorist attack might happen. As anyone who grew up during the early 2000s will tell you, 9/11 was probably the last thing to come to their minds whilst going about their day. People were, and still are able to move on with their lives even if 9/11 happened. I am honestly shocked that the people who worked on the movie didn't see this. I could tell that they would have been pissed if they saw it. Enter also says that if the movie was set in either 1999 or 2000, it would make a lot more sense. No, it wouldn't! The reason that Turning Red is set in 2002 is because the director, Domi Shi, grew up during that time. Mr. Enter completely missed the point entirely when saying this stuff. No person in the world would ever bring up a horrible tragedy when talking about a Disney Pixar film. People have speculated that maybe 9/11 made more of an impact for him and that his childhood was probably not a good one. But Mr. Enter truly sounded like he was just bringing up something completely unrelated just to take points off the movie itself. This is easily the worst take Mr. Enter has given to a movie, and probably the worst take on Turning Red in general. And what happened after? You probably already know. Within 24 hours after the video was uploaded, Twitter user CocoFox023 posted the now infamous clip, and it went viral. People were posting about how the take was bad and didn't work. Some found it funny to the point where they would make a lot of memes connecting the movie to the tragedy, and others talked about how Mr. Enter ultimately hit rock bottom. I remember being on both Twitter and YouTube while this was happening, and it was absolutely bonkers. Somehow 9/11 jokes were revived all because of Mr. Enter. It was honestly just crazy. You might be asking, what did Mr. Enter have to say about all this? Well, Mr. Enter did respond, but instead of calming the waters, he made an entire Twitter thread and said this. Good to know that after a career of insulting people, getting things blatantly untrue, going into anti-masked rants, this is your moral line. This is the moment where you said too far when I thought that a mediocre movie didn't properly represent its stated year. Yeah, he basically talked people down, saying that they didn't watch the full video and took things out of context, saying that he didn't care how many people actually hate him. Even going as far as to unironically quote Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, and also bringing up completely unrelated topics like Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling, as well as saying that he was not gonna shut up despite his own good. It's also worth noting that he ended up turning off the comment section of that video, which is a very bad move. And Forbes made an entire news article talking about the whole situation. Now after all this, Mr. Enter started losing more than 10,000 subscribers because of what he had done and basically ruined his own reputation on the internet. While this was happening, Crimson Mayhem, his former editor, made a tweet making fun of the situation, saying, Mr. Enter revived 9/11 jokes more faster than the majority of YouTube poops you've tried. Mr. Enter responded with a quote tweet saying, I revived 9/11 jokes faster than you could finish editing a review too, basically attacking him altogether. After all that chaos, Mr. Enter became a laughingstock to the point where people started referring to him as the Turning Red 9/11 guy, saying that he hated the movie because it doesn't mention 9/11. People have made great videos talking about how all of this was doing damage to him. Animat put up a highlight video on his podcast channel
and he has a great explanation as to why Mr. Enter has a serious mental problem and needs to get serious help. I left a link in the description if you want to check it out. How did I feel when all this happened? Let me tell you, I was angry. I was very angry when this was going on. I couldn't believe that someone would mention one of the worst terrorist attacks in history as a way to criticize a movie. A few months after the whole situation, and days after the anniversary of 9/11, I made an entire rant about him and the whole scenario on my DeviantArt page. But to be honest, it felt like I was just being angry for literally no reason whatsoever. Well, needless to say, the way Mr. Enter handled the whole situation was just very poor, and it ruined his whole reputation on the internet and made him look like a laughingstock. However, the story doesn't end there. Mr. Enter would eventually try to make things better months after the whole controversy. In episode 9 of Unpopular Opinions, he mentioned the controversy and apologized for saying the Turning Red 9/11 comment, admitting that it was an incredibly stupid thing to say.
That was a stupid point. I'm not going to defend it. And I can't say sorry enough for this kind of stuff that I've been doing throughout my entire career. I'm surprised it took this long for it to catch up to me.
Now, do you think that this is the point where people would forgive him for what happened? Honestly, no. Because he failed to mention how he berated people for criticizing him in that Twitter thread and insulting Crimson Mayhem. He honestly sounded like he was just sorry for saying the 9/11 comment and not for the things that he said on Twitter. A few months later, Mr. Enter would eventually unlist the now infamous review, and it even made it to number 5 on his top 10 worst Mr. Enter videos list. In it, he properly acknowledged that he was in the wrong for making that comment and apologized for everything that he did afterwards, clearly showing regret for what he had done.
In all seriousness, let's talk about what I did objectively. I said something stupid. Like, it was horrendously stupid. Very, very, very stupid. One of the most stupid things that I've ever said in my life. But it wasn't hateful, it wasn't deceitful. No one got hurt. And in the grand scheme of things, everyone got a good laugh about it. At my expense, but hey, anything to lighten the mood, right? Although I will say that my behavior after this review was not acceptable. I basically got really pissed. I yelled at people. Got insulted by my own father. Insulted one of my old editors. The last one is probably the most shameful thing out of all of them.
After the video was published, Crimson Mayhem went to Twitter and said that he liked the video and forgave Mr. Enter for what happened. I'm gonna get attacked for saying this, but I also saw the video and liked it as well. Personally, I'm honestly gonna give Mr. Enter another chance because I know that he has potential to actually be a good reviewer. I know that some people are gonna be like, "No, George, don't defend him, he sucks." I'm not defending him. I'm giving him a second chance because I know that there is a way for Mr. Enter to learn from his mistakes and improve himself and his reviews. I'm not a fan of his content at all, but I do feel like that he has potential. I'm kind of annoyed that even to this day, people still make jokes about how Turning Red needs 9/11 and viewing Mr. Enter as a bad guy altogether. I didn't make this video to expose him. I made it as a way to look back on the crazy events of what happened back in April of 2022. And this controversy, as infamous as it is, it'll forever remain as one of the craziest things that I have ever witnessed. Also, to end the video off, I'm proud to announce that the next part of Red Panda Express is being worked on. I had fun collecting Pixar Cars diecast, but I am glad that I can continue what I have abandoned for some time. Did you guys enjoy the video? If so, let me know in the comments. This is George the Red Engine signing off, and I'll see you real soon. Bye!